It's about how this came together, and then we're going to take some questions from the audience. Get that microphone.
Well, as most of you, I hope, would know, that most films take about years to do. I mean, at the very least, a year of pre-production, a year of location scouting, et cetera, et cetera. This film was basically done in a week, in the sense that it was filmed in 1 week. It was the one day at Madison Square Garden, which was Thanksgiving Day. It was the week of Muscle Shoals, and then it was the December 6th here at Altamont. So that was all the filming. It was 6 months of editing by the first woman you saw, Charlotte Swerin, who's now passed away. But she's the one that really mastered all of it by putting all the pieces together. And that's how we got this film. The Stones didn't want it out originally. Mick didn't want it. He was concerned about the image that he was going to have based on the fact that he didn't have control of the audience. And the thing, by the way, I wanted to mention a few things that I forgot to mention. I'm also here with my grandson, Ari, who's a musician, which keeps it in the blood in the family. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, if you noticed in the film, the thing that always scared me the most was that Hell's Angel standing next to Mick, who was slowly losing his mind. You saw the guy puffing and pulling his hair out and taking his photo. That's the thing that scared me more than anything that went on with this. Now, after we finished the film, the fact that I had done the original deal was to film 2 songs. The Stones were going to promote their album in Europe, and they used the film to do that. So I was looking around to find somebody to do it, and the day before Thanksgiving, I met the Maisels. They went to Baltimore and watched the Stones perform and came back and said, look, we'd like to film 4 of the songs, and we think you can get a half-hour TV show out of that. And I said, oh, okay, sounds pretty good. So we made a deal to originally film 4 of the songs during Madison Square Garden for $20,000. I bring up the money because nowadays it sounds like peanuts. So 20 grand to do the garden. Then after the garden, they said, you know, we'd like to go down to Muscle Shoals with the guys. We were going to West Palm for the festival there, but they're going to go after that to Muscle Shoals. They said, do you mind if we go watch that? Maybe we can have an hour TV show. So they went to Muscle Shoals. I went to Miami. They called back when everything started to fall through with regards to Sears Point, because they just wanted a lot of money. And the Maisel said, do you mind if we go out to Altamont and film it? We'll see what happens. And I said, Sarah, girl, you never can tell what you're going to get. So they went to Altamont. And when they went out there, they called ahead and hired all these different cameramen because it was done in the very last second. Out of all that, there is one little side story. This guy named George Lucas, I think you're familiar with him here. George Lucas was one of the cameramen. But the constant story that everybody told, that Albert told me afterwards, is that, I don't know if you've ever seen film when there's no images on it, it comes back with dust spots and it's like grainy, for people who still remember what film looked like. Well, anyhow, George Lucas's film came back and there was nothing on it, just dust spots. So all the guys in the lab from that point on used to say, that's where he got his ideas for Star Wars. So now that's the way that all started to go. While we were going around to film the deal, within a few weeks I had an offer from Universal and Ben Tannen, and we sat down to negotiate on it. And all during the time they were getting ready to do the European tour, David Maisels, you saw that moviola that the Stones were sitting in front of? We would travel all over doing different talks and deals, and he would always have a moviola moved into the room. He was always editing. Just the whole film, the whole time, he and Charlotte would come there, and they were editing for 6 months to get the thing done while we were still negotiating the deal. And then after 6 months, we needed more money. Oh, by the way, the deal for the film was done on the airplane coming back from Altamont. When David and I were sitting there, and David says, you know, I think I have a film. We still didn't know that he captured the murder. We didn't know that for 3 more days. But he said, I think we have a film, you know, just to tell a great story of whatever went on. I said, okay, let's do it. And I wrote a check for $100,000, which I didn't have. And I had to transfer money to the bank still have. But the end result is that's how the original deal got done for it. It was actually 133 grand was going to be the cost. And then we ended up starting to negotiate the deal with Universal, fell through. And we went on to do a deal with Columbia, and that fell through. And then it's a long, long story. But the end result is I'm still proud of this, and I can still keep watching it. It's always great to listen to the Stones.
Thank you. I'd like to do is open this up to questions, if there are any questions out there. Oh boy, right up front, people are ready. Okay, let's go. And I've got a microphone. Ron, I hope you're ready.
Hey Ron, thanks for putting on this DVD. It was really great. My name's AJ. I've got two questions. Quick question. My first question is, there's a scene with you, Mick and Steve. You guys are in a hotel room, it looks like. And did you know at that time that, okay, these are going to be two people that the entire world was going to know who they are, and that it was going to be kind of something that would be pretty legendary in terms of, you know, that you would be at that with them at that time in that hotel room and what was going on?
No. No, actually what happened there, which is interesting, is they always wanted me to give my opinion on the music they were doing, so they started playing these two songs that they loved. You know, obviously, Brown Sugar at the time and Wild Horses, and they said, you know, what do you think, what do you think? And I always made a rule never to give my opinion, because number one, I never buy the records. So it's not like I'm the audience, I just love their music, so I refuse. I just say, I'm not telling you, and I'd laugh. I won't tell you, it's just, you know, keep playing your music. So that, I would always tell the Stones that I always thought they were going to be big for a long time, because at the time, starting at 65, when I was with them, I'd say, you know, each Stone has its own fans. Mick has this myriad of fans. Keith has a legion of his own of fans. Charlie has these quieter fans. And Bill has, you know, so each one had a, so I'd say, you know, guys, you've got all these great fans. And they said, we don't care. They never did. They didn't pay attention to that.
Thank you. My second question is, would you mind signing my DVD?
Sure.
All right, while you get that, I know there's a question back here.
Do you still keep in touch with the Stones at all?
No. The only time I hear from them or contact them is when they're in town and they have those ridiculous ticket prices, and I have them give me free tickets and passes.
And part two, were they ever sober when you were with them?
Yes, most of the time actually they were. You know, Mick was very straight. He was very business oriented and all that, and really we used to tease him. And Keith, of course, is Keith. Charlie basically was always in his room talking to his wife. He was the exact example of what any person wanted to see if somebody was in love with their wife and stays with them through thick and thin and all these things on the road. And Bill was always after the women.
Hello, my name is Vivian. I was there and I was fun. And it was a very traumatic experience because we just had Woodstock. And, you know, so we were excited about, we were going to have our own Woodstock. And it was just getting there and getting up to the very front of the stage is where I ended up. I was right there when all that action was going on. It was intense. I don't think we left the stage the whole time. I was about 16 years old and watching the Hells Angels and the violence and growing and being a young girl at the time and thinking it was peace and love and we were coming to have our own experience in the Bay Area. You know, it was traumatic in many ways because of the violence of the Hells Angels and kind of how it just got let loose on the crowd. It was amazing how the bands tried to keep it together, as we saw in the movie. There was a magazine that came out called
Is there a question there?
Yeah, have you heard of Scanlan's magazine? They came out with this poster. This is a poster of myself and my girlfriend in front of the stage made possible by Scanlan's magazine. I don't know if you ever saw that.
I don't know. I can't see it from here.
Yeah, if you'd like to see it, I can show it. Thank you.
In 1969, I know that the event security industry existed. So, why didn't you use them?
Didn't you notice that they were there? But you gotta, you know, how many do you expect to have? There's 300,000 people. How many event security are going to be good? The first guy that we met is the guy that led us into the audience where Mick got punched in the face. So we didn't rely that much on them, but there were a lot of them around there. Like you saw on the stage, there were about 3 or 4 uniformed guys. They were there, but once again, when you got 300,000 people, there's not much you can do when you're 100 guys or 200 guys, or even 1,000 guys.
I was at Altamont, and love the movie. I have never seen it till now.
Wow.
I'm 26, not 6 feet.
Yeah.
I was 26. And I just wanted to say, just for the record, that there were 2 different concerts that night, or that day. Because from my area and my experience, and with all the people I interacted with throughout the entire area, it was mellow. All we knew on the stage was that there were delays for things. We didn't know why. But all of us, all the rest of us there, had a great time. It was smooth. None of that stuff in the movie was a part of my experience that weekend.
Well, I must say that a lot of people contacted me that were 100 feet back from the stage, and they had a great time. And if you read the newspapers at the time for the next couple of days, they raved about how fantastic it was. And then there was one little mention of a murder, but then unfortunately there was a quiet day for news, and that's all they played up, and that's how the stigma started to go with regard to the area.
Got 2 questions. How did you get involved with Rolling Stones to begin with, and for how long were you with them?
It's the classic way in entertainment, nepotism. My uncle managed them originally.
Uh-oh. I happen to know this questioner. I'm sorry, Ron. God knows what's going to happen.
What was the deal with what was the deal with the Hells Angels? Was there a deal? Was there your experience?
Okay, I always, for years and years, I was ballistic on the fact that there was no deal. Everybody kept saying there was $500 and it was a big deal. The truth is, the first story I got from Sam Cutler was that the Angels came in that school bus that you saw, and they had that bus filled with beer and filled with ice. And they were drinking the beer and ice, and they were throwing the beer cans, and it was starting to hit people in the head. And the result was, if you ever see head wounds, very bloody and messy. You can't go to the Angels and say, give me that beer, or stop throwing the beer, because they're not going to do that. But you can go to the Angels and say, I want beer for the crew. Can we buy your beer for $500? I was told that the Angels were there usually as a form of habit to protect the generators, to just keep the electricity safe. There are so many other stories on this. One other little aside. There were 3 chapters of Angels here. There was San Jose, Oakland, and San Francisco. And they were a little competitive. And most of the people beating the people up, if you noticed, weren't even Hells Angels. They were initiates who were trying to join. So they were trying to impress them by beating people more so than the other ones.
I was there 6 feet from the stage center up until after Crosby, Stills, and Nash played. And 99% of that concert was great. You used 5 songs from the concert. Every single one of them highlighted the violence. You've probably got 6 or 7 hours of incredible music on the cutting room floor. You ever thought about putting some of that together?
Well, they didn't have the rights, by the way. That was the reason. We didn't have the rights. And there's one other point I'd like to make, being here close to the scene of the crime. The thing that you'll have to realize, which always bothered me when everybody saying, well, what do you think would have made it different with the Angels? What could have helped? If you'll notice, this in reality was a festival. Like you said, this was up Jefferson Airplane. There were a ton of other groups, Santana, all these other groups played. The ones that really organized it was the Grateful Dead group. You know, that was Emmett Grogan and Rock Scully and all those. Those were the ones pushing to do this West Coast Woodstock. So that was the thing that took the impetus. And they didn't know what, that's all they cared about was doing this kind of event. And what bothered me was the Grateful Dead came there and didn't play. The Grateful Dead turned around and ran. And I always sit there and say, well, if you think what would have made it different, I think if Jerry Garcia would have got out there and said, hey guys, calm down, this is our town and all this, I think that might have made a difference.
In one of the scenes, they had Melvin Bella kind of joking about being a free concert, but he said that he would take the money. Right. Was he actually paid for his consulting fees in that?
I hired Bella originally because I was going to sue Sears Point. I didn't want the concert to begin with. I always thought, first of all, it was a lie. Ralph Gleason lied about high ticket prices. He wanted all tickets to be free. The tickets were $8.50. So the end result was they were being sucked into doing this free concert. The very least that I could do, which I tried to do, was make sure that it was the Rolling Stones performing for free, but it wasn't a Rolling Stones concert. And then when Dick Carter wanted somebody to sign for it, I refused. because I didn't want to have the obligation. And John James, who was a big con guy with Young American Enterprises, don't ever believe in the title. John James is the one that signed for the event. And that's what that's the misunderstanding. The Stones didn't put on the event.
How much income was really generated from your tours? Was most of the tour for the reason for to just promote albums, or did you actually, were you able to really generate a lot of income?
The Stones needed money, and that was the reason they hired me. By the way, further answer to your thing, I hired Bell Eye to sue Sears Point, and that was 10 grand he got. That was it.
Thank you.
I was curious, you said that the Stones didn't want the release of the film due to the negative connotation that it goes towards them and the whole thing. I think that it would have been effective to show what their take on the film was. I was curious as to why that was left out.
Well, I mean, you saw their take on the way they saw it. They had no comment. They've never commented on it. What's there to say? This is what happened. You know, it's a microcosm of society. You put 300,000 people together, and you're going to end up with a murder, and you're going to end up with some other deaths. Less people died here than died in Woodstock.
I was wondering if you could comment that earlier in the film there was a woman that was soliciting or asking for donations for the Black Civil Rights.
Black Panthers.
Black Panthers. And then, this is the first time I've heard of the death. This is the first time I realized it was a black man. And do you want to make any comments on that as far as
I mean, what was the question?
I just find it, when I heard the tone of the voice of the Hells Angels on the radio or on the telephone, it was like, oh, we're dealing with rednecks. And then to have a racially integrated concert. And it's like, well, all the scuffles, why did you bring his knife out? That scuffle, but not the other scuffles.
Oh, no, he brought, I mean, when I looked at that, what happened is David Bezos called me to the office and said, Ronnie, I got to show you this. And he showed me, and then there's little things that, the little things that make a difference. If the girlfriend was wearing a black sweater, a lot of people would say there was no gun. If it wasn't for the fact that she had this big white black sweater on, Albert David saying, look, Ron, look at that, you see the gun go by. First of all, what's this guy bringing a gun to a concert to? And the second thing was, the way the angel handled it, I saw the close-ups, which you don't see as much here, but the angel was almost like a dance move. Here the guy comes up with the gun, and the angel reaches over and grabs the gun hand. I don't know how, you would do about that, but he grabbed it, pointed it down, he pulled the knife out from his belt, and then he came around and stabbed it. It was like a dance move. But the point was, he knew how to do that. And so that's the scary part, but the good part is that how many people could have been shot if the guy started shooting the gun? That's what it was going to be. Yeah, no, that's it.
Good stuff. Okay, a couple more hands. That got people going.
So I help produce the events here in Livermore, and if you want to bring them together for a reunion.
Let me make a Black Panther comment to further with this. When we were in Oakland, I used to carry the cash around. I used to go around with $30,000 or $40,000 in cash that people knew about. And the police came to us in Oakland and said, Ron, first they handcuffed my hand to my briefcase, and I said, what are you doing? They said, oh, the Black Panthers heard that you have this money, and they want to take it from you to buy guns. So I said, oh, I don't want them to take my arm. So at that point, Ike and Tina Turner calls me up and says, Ron, come here. He brings me backstage with his band. He says, Ron, if the Black Angels come, not the Hells Angels, but the Black Panthers, same thing. The Black Panthers come here and try and take the money. You come over and stand by us. And they opened their jackets and they were all carrying 45s.
The stage seemed incredibly small and so short. Obviously, Stones learned something. Why was it so small? Why were the fans allowed to be so close?
Well, did you notice the show at Madison Square Garden? The fans are right there, and it's right about level there, and it's the same thing. Everybody makes a big deal about how high the stage would be. First of all, I always said that if the stage was 10 feet high, I can't think of anything more than the Angels would have loved to dive off of that into the crowd. So, the shorter stage, that didn't make a difference. It's just What happened in the front of the stage was the speakers caught on fire, and the Hells Angels brought their motorcycles in to protect the speakers originally. The crowds would push forward and knock over the bikes. That's what was going on. That's why you saw that point where they're bringing the speakers up off the ground. That's the other little part of the story of what was going on.
Hi, Ron. I think the film did obviously a fantastic job capturing sights and sounds. And heading of obvious. Care to describe the smell?
It stunk. But actually you smelled the violence and evil in the air around the stage. It was pretty weird. You definitely sensed what was going on. By the way, when we took off at the end, you saw everybody diving into the helicopter? Well, when we got off the ground with everybody laying on top of one another, the captain, the pilot said, "We've got a problem," which is not what you want to hear when you're taking off and you're in the air already. He says, "Yeah, we've got too many people. We're overweight. I can't bring this down in a hover. Normally, I'm going to have to land this like a plane, using gliding in, and I've never done this before." We made it, but it was a little hairy.
Ron, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience. I'll give my last little plug. Of course, we have our book outside, and if you do have a story about the Alpine. I saw a couple of people who said that they were here. Did anyone see themselves? Jim, I don't know if you count. Did anybody see themselves? I see one. Anybody else see themselves in the movie? Yeah, too many people. All right. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy your evening. Thanks for